Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today on Masech is Yevamot daf Ayin Gimel. We're going to begin on Ayin Gimel Amud Aleph, the third line from the top. B'aminim Rav Sheshis. So the following question is posed. We know that an oral, as we've been learning up until this point in this parak, is not allowed to eat truma as well as eat the korban Pesach. Now the Gemara asks, an oral mahu b'maiser. Do we allow this oral also? Do we allow him to eat maiser, or do we say no? So Pesach, maybe we should say, just like we learn out by Pesach, maiser in aninus, when it comes to the din of an oinen, says Rashi, gabi maiser ksiv lo b'Pesach u'minei alfinan, yov nami maiser b'Pesach le'in arelus. Maybe we should also learn out maiser from Pesach, just like we learn out Pesach from maiser. Regarding an onein, we should learn meiser from Pesach in Arelus. Oh, Dilma Chamer Mikal Yolef. The way that it works at Kal V'Chaimer is you go the strict from the lenient. Kal, which is meiser, Mechamer from Pesach Lo Yolef. Okay, let's go straight to question 5. Mas study the boya. So let's see if he says it a little bit differently. So Ha'im Yalfinan Me Pesach. Do we learn out? Again, the question is, what's the din of an oral when it comes to Meiser Sheni? So, if we learn out, we can learn from Pesach, and therefore it'll be usher to eat Meiser Sheni for an oinen, and for an oral, again, we're talking about. Kederech Yalfin and Pesach Mamaisu in Aninus. That just like we learn out Pesach from Meiser regarding an oinen, so too we can learn out the other way around from Pesach, that an oral is not allowed to eat meiser sheni. Or chomer lomin min akal of a kal ein lomin min a chomer. It's one thing that Pesach, which is chomer, can be learned out from meiser, and therefore there's a din, an issue of an oinen. However, when it comes to the other way around, we're not going to learn. So again, this is just the question whether or not an oral who already know cannot eat truma, an oral is not allowed to eat the korban Pesach, do we say an oral is also us with meiser sheni? So Omer Luhu Tenisua. So we actually learned this. It says as follows: Hatruma ba'bikurim. Only when it comes to the truma, as well as bikurim, the first fruits, chayav lehen misa. So there is the possibility, if you have a tamei individual that ate it, so there's a din misa on such a person. V'chaymesh, and there's also din chaymesh. What is that? It says Rashi, if you have a non-Kohen who eats either truma or bikurim b'shogeg, so the din is that he has to pay an additional fifth. It says Rashi, abu b'meiser sheni lo tarzarm achile. We know that a non-Kohen is allowed to eat meiser sheni. V'in chaymesh ella b'poides maisro. The only time there's the potential of chaimish is only to redeem it. However, when it comes to just stam eating it, b'shogeg, there's no isser b'shogeg. There's nothing wrong with a non-Kohen eating meiser. It's only an issue with truma and bikurim. So therefore, only by truma and bikurim is there a din of chaimish. Furthermore, b'asurun lazar, as we said, only by truma and bikurim is asur to a non-Kohen. However, non-Kohen is allowed to eat meiser sheni. Furthermore, v'hein Nixi Kayin. These things belong to the Kayin, and therefore he could be Mekadosh a woman with it. He can purchase servants and lands and pure animals. However, says Rashi, well, Meiser lo nitin el achila. The whole purpose of Meiser is only for eating. Ushtia, Usticha. The in Ishimis Kadeshes boy. Ustam Mishra Amer, the Omer Meiser Momen Gavohu. This is according to Shita Rameir that holds Meiser Sheni's Momen Gavohu belongs to Hashem. Fine. So that's another distinction. Another difference between them. That says Rashi, when there's a forbidden mixture, it's a 1 in 100. However, when it comes to meiser, it's batal b'roiv. You don't need a 1 in 100 ratio. Any other differences? Yes. Tu'unin rechitzas yadayim. It needs the washing of your hands, even if a person is eating fruits. But if it's truma and bikurim, we say that stam yadayim are shniyos, which is a din d'Rabbanan, and therefore they have to wash their hands because a sheni can passel truma, because Sheni can make something into a shlishi. What? Not chulin, but truma. And therefore you have to wash your hands. Alvor says Rashi, Meiser v'chulin kaimul hanata yedol aperes harzemagasei ruach. There's no need, and we do not wash our hands for chulin fruits or for Meiser Sheni fruit. Also, Erev Shemesh. So when it comes to a Tvul Yoim, while he's waiting for the Erev Shemesh, he's already allowed to eat Meiser Sheni. He's not allowed to eat Truma. He has to wait until the sun sets, until Seitzah Chachavim. Hari Elu b'Truma b'Bikurim. So we end up saying all these things apply to Truma b'Bikurim, Masha'in kin b'Meiser, but they don't apply to Meiser. So it's a pretty long list of all the differences. L'chayr, they're all the differences. Navim Isa, if it's true that we want to make a distinction between Truma and Meiser, that Truma, an oral is not allowed to eat, but maybe when it comes to Meiser, an oral is allowed to eat. So in Isa, the Nisni oral also behen Mashen Kim b'Meiser. So it must be that an oral is also usher in Meiser, because otherwise it would have made that distinction. No, Tanim Shire. It is possible that an oral is not allowed to eat Truma, but is allowed to eat Meiser Sheni. So why isn't this distinction mentioned over here? So sometimes the Tana mentions things, they leave things out. As the Gemara always asks, my shear to high shear. You don't just leave one thing out. It has to be at least a couple things that are left out. If there's only one thing, you would have mentioned it. There's only one thing left, you would have mentioned that one last thing. But if there's a couple or many other things, so then it makes sense. So where do we find some other thing that was left out? So we're into Shirka Tani Seifa. If you look at the Seifa over there, it says the other way around. Yesh b'Meiser u'Bikurim. So sometimes Truma and Bikurim are greater than Meiser, but sometimes Meiser and Bikurim are Mash'in Kema Truma. So there are certain elements of Meiser Sheni that apply, that do not apply to Truma. So what is that? Shaha Meiser B'Bikurim Tu'unin Havas Makim. When it comes to these things, it needs Havas Makim, that you actually need to eat it in a certain location. You have to go within the walls of Yerushalayim. However, when it comes to Truma, Nechelos B'Gvul, it can be even outside when it comes to Truma. Furthermore, Utu'unin Vidui, when it comes to these things, a person's going to eat Meiser, so or Bikurim, so it needs Vidui. As Rashi says, Biyarti HaKadosh Min Abayis, Hini Biyarti Es Reishis B'Bikurim. Furthermore, V'asul Oinen, when it comes to Bikurim, at least, says Rashi, is Bikurim, they're aser. Utu'unim vidoi, v'asul oinen. And an oinen is not allowed to eat Bikurim. Rabbi Shimon mater. So we see there's a machlokus when it comes to Bikurim regarding an oinen, which is v'chayavan b'biur, and it needs biur. However, again, Rav Shimon poiter. Now, v'il also lavar mehen betuma. Now, these are supposedly the whole list, but there's certain things that are left out. It doesn't mention also lavar mehen betuma. It doesn't mention the isser of using it as fuel, which is also true. That there's a distinction between meiser and bikurim. That when it comes to burning it for fuel, it says in Rashi, so you're not allowed to use it as fuel. If it became tame, then tumasan matirasan lavara. Just because it became tame, you don't have the right to burn it. Lo amrinan, we don't say that avagavdol nitin meiser el achil mishtiv asicha ve'achalta hanimili tahar. Avahecha de nitma. If let's say it's already tame, you can't, it's not fit to eat. Yadlikbo, you think, oh, so maybe you could burn it. No. El asul avayir batoma. You're not allowed to. The kedichsev lo biarti mimenu batame. Mashinkin batruma to tumasa matirasa lahavara. Mahavara. It will come on b'shmaisen. It's also brought that in second parak in Shabbos. So when it comes to truma, so we see that there's a difference between if it's tameh, shemen tameh, whether you can burn it. So if it's truma, it's allowed. However, when it comes to meiser, it's not allowed. All right, so we see this explicitly. Okay, so that's one distinction. There's a difference between meiser and bikurim, whether it's allowed to be burned. As we continue to ein gimel mebeis, the oichlav betumas atzman, also var mehen betuma. Fine. Also var mehen betuma, and furthermore, beoichlin betumas atzman. If a person eats a betumas atzman, says Rashi, shaguf tahar. Let's say you're tahar, behem tameh, and they're tahar. They're tameh. There's the actual food is tameh, even though you're tahar. Then loike, then you'll get malchus. Mashin came truma. Not so when it comes to truma. That even though if a person is tahar, but the item is tameh, if the truma is tameh, then we don't get malchus. Lokatani al matani b'shayir. So therefore, we do see that certain things are left out. So therefore, this is not a raya either way. Really, it's not a raya. We said, it must be the fact that there's distinction is not made. It must be that there is no difference, and it's usher even for meiser for an oral to eat. So there's in lav dafka. Okay, question 6. Ha'im oinen is a oinen mutter b'meiser b'truma ubikurim. So we saw already explicitly that when it comes to bikurim, it's clearly a machlokas. That we saw. Now, when it comes to meiser, the din is that meiser is usher. An onin is usher in meiser, and it is their mutter in truma. So when it comes to truma, in this regard, we are more lenient. Okay. So again, when it comes to an onin, this is the din. Shamaiser bikurim as asul onin. Right? These things is asub oinin. Shimon matir only bikurim. So bikurim is a machlokas. However, when it comes to meiser sheni, in that everyone holds it is asur. Okay, and this question is also TA 26. So again, at this point, it's that's TA 26. It may also be and then we also had the question. Question 7, what's the din when it comes to truma and meiser if it's tameh? Question TB28 asked that question. So we said there's a distinction. When it comes to truma, you're allowed to use it as fuel, even when it's tameh. Meiser is us. We're going to see the reasoning for that shortly. Okay, so with that said, let's continue the top of Ein Gimel Amud Beis by the 2 dots. So we said, V'asurin l'oinin. When it comes to Meiser, Sheni, and Bikurim, it's Asur b'oinin, Rav Shimon Matir by Bikurim. Okay, so as we said, when it comes to Bikurim, it's a machlokus, if an onin is allowed to eat. However, when it comes to Meiser, Sheni, everyone says it's Asur. So Minolhu, so how does he know? That's Tachsib. L'such lecha v'sharecha. You're not allowed to eat Meiser deganach v'tirashcha v'sharecha, the wheat, the wine and oils, the goimer utrumas yodcha. V'yomer mar trumas yodecha el bikurim. This is referring to bikurim. V'iskish bikurim u'meiser, and we make a connection between bikurim to meiser. Ma meiser sheni asul oinen, just like meiser sheni is asul bikurim asul oinen. So too when it comes to meiser sheni, when it comes to bikurim, it's also asul oinen. And again, we said it is really a machlokas, but nonetheless, that's the opinion. Shimon truma karin rachmana. It's called truma. Ma truma muteris leinain. When it comes to truma, it is mutter. So when it comes to truma, it is mutter. So af bikurim mutter leinain. So too bikurim is mutter. Fine. V'chayavin b'bir. Rav Shimon poiter mar makish or mar mul makish. V'asel avayir mehen batum, as we said. V'oichel batumas atzman loike. So minon desan Rav Shimon oimer. That I did not burn it while it was tameh. Ben shani tameh b'hu tahar. Ben shani tahar b'hu tameh. So this is referring to the isser of burning meiser sheni. It's not allowed while it's tameh. Just bikurim. V'heichem musar al chilasai en yodea. But where we find he's warned on eating, it's not clear. Now tumas aguf behedik sibbe. When it comes to the tumas aguf, a person's tameh. it's beferish. Nefesh asher tigabo, the person touches the vitama the erev v'yoichem and kadashim kiim rachas b'sar b'mayim. So it's pretty beferish, this whole din. So it's very clear. The hachikim and boile. Tumas atzma menayin. How do we know if, let's say, the person is tahar, but the meiser itself is tamei? So we learn out that from this, an einin is aser in meiser. V'tana de Rabbi Shmuel, afil tamei v'tahar oichan al shulchan echad b'kara achas. Even let's say, if a tamei and a tahar person eating the same plate, the ein chayshishin, we're not concerned. Become rachmana hahu yarmul achas misharecha tachlena hacha lo yiseichul. Fine. Mashin came with truma. So minolan. How do we know when it comes to truma that it's okay? That you can burn it. So Rabbi Yochanan Diamakra lo biarti mimenu batame. Only it. Mimenu iyatama v'tamav shemen shel truma shenitma. However, when it comes to shemen shel truma that became tame, it can be burned. Maybe it's saying you can't burn it, but you could be burning oil of kodesh. The lav kavachaymer who ma meiser hakal. When it comes to meiser sheni, amratar lo biyarti mimenu b'tamei. It says you're not allowed to burn it. So kodesh chamor kol shekain, certainly you're not allowed to burn it. If you can't burn tummy meiser, so you can't burn tummy kodesh. 1 second. The yahaki truma nami kavachaymer who. Right? It's a kavachaymer. So the kavachaymer shows that we know truma is more chomer than meiser. So we should say, how can we say meiser's mutter to burn, but not truma? But truma is more chomer. No, haksib mimenu. It says mimenu, which comes to say only by meiser, but not by truma. If you already have a kavachaymer, so you have a kavachaymer that just like meiser sheni, you can't burn it, so do not kachim. But you can't use that kavachaymer by truma because it's possible that because of mimenu, it's coming to exclude that by truma you could burn. The question is why. So Mastabra, it's logical that kodesh lo mamatina, that we're not going to be mamayit kodesh shekain pankachs. What is that? So when it comes to kodesh, it has the following attributes: pigul, the person has the improper machshava; noiser, or it's leftover. It's considered to be a carbon. There's a carbon ilah. There's a sacrifice for one who misuses it. And kares, there is a strong punishment of kares. Vasal einin, and there's also an aser to kodesh is also aser to an einin. Adrabah, truma lo mamatina shechin machpaz misa. When it comes to truma, there's a din misa if you eat it. The chaimish, it was done b'shoigeg. The in lapidyan, there's no redemption. The asur lazarim, and a non-kohen can't eat it. Your answer is hanach nefishin, either because there's more. The karis adifa. The whole notion of karis is more of a reason to be strict. Okay. So with that said, let's look one more time at question 7. Ha'im mutter lahavir shemen tamei shalmaiser or truma umenolan. So he says shalmaiser is also because there's a little biarti mimenu matame. But by truma, because we made a dik of mimenu, it's mimenu v'lo b'truma. Okay. 2 dots. And we also said that if a person eats it while they themselves are tahar, but the item is tameh, so he gets malchus. Mashkin can be truma. That's only by mice, not by truma. So milkahu the lucky. When it comes to truma, fine. He's not going to get malchus ha isura ika, but eating tameh truma is still an iser. So manal and summer krab b'shiracha toichlenu lezev loyal acher. That this one's supposed to eat lezev loyal acher. I b'lava b'machal say. Amar Avashi Mareisha Nami Shamat Mina. I can learn that from the beginning. The Tan of Ashir, the Tan of Shir that was left over. Midalo Katani, as we continue on Dalan Manalaf, the Nohagin Bishar Shnei Shvua. Then Lehem Pidyon, Mashain Kin B'maiser Shema Mina, says Rashi. But Nohagin Truma Ubikurim Bishar Shnei Shvua. It applies all the years. The B'chol Shana Sashmita of a Maiser Sheni and Noig B'Gimel V'Vav. Meiser Sheni is not noig on years 3 and 6 of the 7-year Shemitah because Meiser Ani is brought instead. So we already see that there's another distinction. Ve'en pidyon, as we said, there's no redemption. Mashen kim b'meiser. So again, we see clearly from here that there are other things that are left out, and therefore, Ulaskana, it basically shows that it's shaykh to say that when it comes to Meiser Sheni, it's not so clear what the din is when it comes to an oral. Adkan.